It's such an honor to be on your podcast.
For sure.
I'm just very grateful you guys said yes and that I want to tell everybody about you guys because I think you're pretty cool and people need to follow you and see what you're up to and in the cosplay world and also in the fitness world. So why don't you ladies tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your background? Maybe how did you come to know Jesus? Let's start there.
I feel like you should start.
Mother and daughter.
I was like, I feel like that makes the most sense.
So we are a mother-daughter duo, and we primarily work in fitness, and we've come into that in a roundabout kind of way. I was definitely into fitness first. And I mean, yeah, I'm a little older. And then I just drug her to the gym with me. And then I guess the same could be said about your,
the cosplay stuff
The
is
cosplay.
just basically the same thing and reverse it. Because I got into it and then I drug her to an event. And so a lot of it was just us pushing each other out of our comfort zone.
That's true. That's true. And then as far as like how we got into our relationship with Christ, for me, it's been an evolving process. So definitely it's had its highs and lows, which I think are common for a lot of people. But I always knew that I wanted my kids to have their roots grounded in Christ. So we always gave them the option, my husband and I would, tell them you can make your own choices, but while you're living with us, this is what we're doing. Come with us. And we never had to, kind of ask them to go or push them to go. They always just, were happy to do it. And then as adults, I said, now the decision is yours, whether you choose to implement the things you've learned in your life, that's up to you. But it's worked out.
Yeah, definitely has. And I think too, like having parents that gave me that option actually made me want to go more because I realized that I didn't need to go for them. I think sometimes whenever parents put that pressure of kind of you need to go for me, it kind of puts you as the god. And then I think if maybe your relationship with your parents is not as good at that time, it's going to put a strain on wanting to go to church, because if you feel like you're doing it for them, you're not going to want to go if your relationship with them is maybe like not the best, or like even if it's just, I don't know. In my teenage years, I was a stinker. So, I mean, I'm sure I would have not wanted to go, like, just out of rebellion, like.
Well, and that's part of it because, as humans, we tend to want to look at things from a point of self. I think all of us innately do that. And then when I was younger, I went to church because I was afraid of consequences. And as I've gotten older, I've realized I'm a Christian because I really love who God is, like the whole being of just who he is and how he loves us. So I used to read the Old Testament and I was like, ooh, like, whoa, like it's tough. But then I read it again as I'm older and I'm like, actually, it's from a very loving standpoint, and I wanted my kids to fall in love with the whole being of God as who he is, and to want to be in his presence because of how good he is, not because they're afraid of messing up and like I mean, yeah, hell's a good place to want to avoid, like we all want to avoid that, but for me I didn't want
100%.
it's not my primary motivation anymore, and so I wanted that for them too. But I also was like, as a mom, as a parent, pray like, God, whatever they have to walk through to learn about you personally, like let me just as a mom be able to be there by their side if they need me and to guide them. But more often than not, they've been there for me as well. So, as a parent, you don't always have it figured out. You're not always going to walk a perfect, walk in front of your kids, but that's also time to be able to have those hard conversations and truly become sisters in Christ, not just a mother and a daughter.
Paryss, you're an adult now. You're no longer in the teenage realm. So did you guys feel like, or I guess Sidney, do you feel like when Paryss became an adult, like 18 plus, that something shifted in your relationship? Or because I know that when I have teenagers, I have 2 teenagers and a 6-year-old. So there's very much like, I'm still, hey, I'm not your friend, although I want you to like me, but I still have to be your parent. Versus I
Right.
tell them, like, when you're older, I really want to do stuff with you because I would love to actually still hang out with you. Like, I hope you like me enough to hang out with me when I'm older, you know? Like, goals. Do you
There
feel like there was a transition that happened? I don't know what I'm asking, but do you feel like
I
you
know what you're
have
asking. There was not like a clear line of like we just kind of fell into that more naturally because when Paryss and her brother were both still at home, we all three had really similar interests. So we would listen to the same music or watch the same animes or nerd movies. We kind of it's almost like the shell of being a parent kind of came off gradually and you emerge as a friend. So like eventually, like as you're giving your teenager more responsibilities, you're starting to see the adult in them emerge, right? And in that place, instead of a gap, then you get to fill in and be their friend. So I think in hindsight, what I would have liked to have done more, you always look back and you're like, this is what I would have done better. I think that I would have maybe dictated less of how I thought they should do it, and then
mm,
been more like, "What do you think you should do? And how do you think that's going to play out?" Which we did some, but I think
I
more
made a lot of dumb decisions.
oh, that's life for humans. Like, welcome to life.
you're supposed
Like,
to make dumb decisions when you're in the teenage years. That's where you
Still
learn.
making up
no,
now, but
well,
As I.
classic teenage problem. I mean, we're reading in the Old Testament right now, and you're reading about all these like Bible giants that were like making mistakes like in like their 80s and 90s. So I figure
Yeah.
like my
it's
mistakes now are
There's some
still like
grace.
I've still got some grace here, right?
yeah, like there's
So,
nothing new under the sun, really.
Yeah, right. So, Paris, do you feel like there was any transition between your relationship with your mom, from teenage to adult years?
I feel like it was less like it's kind of like Sydney said. It wasn't like necessarily super like a stark difference, but I did notice a
Okay, hold
big
up.
change.
Do you call your mom Sydney? Hold on.
Yes,
Hold on.
yes, yes, I do. There's a reason. There's a
Okay,
reason.
tell me.
That's the reason. Okay, the reason is because before I did social media, I was doing music. And whenever I would call her mom, people would realize she's my mother and try to kind of pressure her to pressure me into doing things. So I got used to calling her
Oh, okay.
Sydney because
You're
most people
redeemed. You're
she
redeemed.
I was like, most people thought she was young enough to be my friend, and then most of my friends were also older growing up. So I was like, it kind of feels awkward to be the only one calling you mom.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's like,
okay. I respect that. I sorry. That was like a, whoa, hold up. Did that change?
no,
That
you're good.
question a
That makes
lot.
sense.
Actually, yeah.
Especially ethnic moms will call me out and be like, "How dare you disrespect your mom?" I'm like, "No, that's I
I'm
promise."
Italian, so it's okay, good. I like
And
your
then
excuse. That is acceptable. Continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
together to like it is sometimes a little bit more professional if we just go by our given names instead of her,
Yes.
everybody addressing me as
Hi,
Sydney and then she's like, "Hi,
mom.
mom."
No, absolutely. But
Yeah.
yes, but I do think it was a bigger jump whenever I got married because I
Mm,
think that the responsibility that even though I was only 19 when I got married, but I still was an adult. I think though more I was still living with her, so it's like more of the responsibility of caretaker was kind of placed onto my husband
Yeah.
yeah,
rather than her. So then I think that she felt like she could be more of my friend at that point because it's like
I
it
would.
it it does make a difference. Like
Totally.
it's like she will always be my mom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Always. But she's not the one that's providing for me anymore, so it takes, like, a
Yeah.
bit of pressure off of the relationship.
It does. Yeah. The dynamic changes a little bit because these are now her decisions and their decisions.
Yeah.
Like I'm out of the, sometimes she'll say, she'll want to ask advice. And I'm like, do you want advice or you just want me to listen? Like I've learned as a parent of an older child to say,
You can
are
lean this way, I'm not gonna bite you.
okay, are you calling to ask me for advice or do you need someone just to listen without judgment? Because I can
Yeah.
do either one, but you need to tell me at the beginning of our conversation, what that is. And so that's been something different that has changed with, you know, being a mom of grown children is being able to say, like, what is the role you would like me to take today? Because I can go
Yeah.
full on Italian mom and tell you exactly what I think. But if that's not
And
what
she will.
and I will. And I will. But if that's not what you need from me today, let me know,
Yeah.
and then let me know how I can pray for you, because I think that's the biggest tool that you have as a parent, is to be able, especially if you're not sure what's going on in their world, but you can see that they're
Yeah.
going through something. Like, I remember when both of my kids had been in situations before, and I was just like, God, you know, I love my kid and I would do anything for them, but you love them more. And so right now, I
Mhm.
don't know what to do. I don't know what's in their headspace. I know I'm doing like maybe the wrong thing, or I'm going to do the wrong thing if I do what I think I need to. So can you just shut me up and let me support them in the best way possible? Now, that's something I couldn't have really done when you were 13. Like, I had to get involved.
Right.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, I'm just going to get your Heavenly Father involved, because like that's maybe something I should have done more as a teenager, is like prayed about that first, then got involved. But sometimes you don't have that. You just have to, like, the situation
Yeah.
is there and it's present. So, you know, I think that it's a constant learning process. It's constantly evolving. And
That's
my prayer is that my kids do a better job with their kids, you know, like
yeah.
learn from my mistakes. Like, what you didn't like that I like, you fix that. Like, do better. Like, it's not gonna hurt my feelings.
I love the
Well, I
example
know
of,
my
like,
feelings as a
you've
mom.
brought it to this like, you've brought it to this level, and now
Mhm.
your kids can take that and continue going higher, and then their
Exactly.
kids and, like, just build up instead of, you know, that's the hope anyway. So,
That's
Yeah.
when did you guys start doing the fitness? Was that always incorporated into your family, or did that develop over time?
Were you in your 30s?
I was 31,
30?
and,
Yes.
so in my 20s, I had a lot of illnesses. I was, sick, I had fibroid tumors, I had to have a lot of
Mm,
surgeries. It was kind of like um, a precursor to what was gonna come later, but we didn't know it. I was just like, "Oh, you know, it is when you're young and in your 20s, you can kinda just be like, 'Whatever,' and so towards the end of my 20s, I was like, 'I'm gonna have to address something that's going on.' Found out that I had a lot of fibroid tumors, ended up
mhm.
having a hysterectomy at 29, and
Oh,
then I felt so much better. I was like, 'I'm gonna start working out.' Had always been really thin. I had always been fairly healthy, fairly active, but never played any sports, never gone to a gym. So I
hmm,
decided I was going to run a
that's
5K
cool.
race. I was like, let's
Yes.
do this. You know, I didn't run. My husband was a college athlete, had played sports all his lives. You know, fitness came really easy to him. So he trained with me and said, I'll run this with you. And I was a wallflower at that time. I didn't really go out of my way to make a lot of friends or talk to a lot of people. I was really easy to embarrass. The one thing that
Mm.
kept going through my mind is, what if I trip and what if I fall? And so race day arrives, my sisters are there, they're gonna run, my husband is there. 15 seconds into the race, someone shoe
No.
catches my shoe, and I clattered to the ground. My husband said he thought someone wrecked on a skateboard. It was just my bony limbs hitting the pavement,
Oh,
and
no.
I was so embarrassed. I jumped back up and started running, and I just kept running, and I knew that something was wrong, but I was so afraid to stop. So I was like the last person to finish. Like the
Oh.
EMTs were like doing like the last like sweep to get people to finish the race. That was me. And when we finally looked, the fronts of both of my knees were gone. So they had to use burn patches for my knees because there was nothing to stitch together. It was really bad.
I remember as a kid that I was like, "This is so cool!" Wow!
She said
Got
my
a
knees were
start.
like Mothman eyes because they were just bright red and glowing.
As
And
a
so
kid, I thought you were awesome for that. I mean,
See, mom, it's all perspective.
yeah,
You're dying, and your kid's like, "You're awesome."
so after I ran by a CrossFit gym though towards the end of the race, and I looked in and there were these like really buff women, and they were just like they looked like they were having fun, and I was like, I want to do that. So I went with a friend the following week. My knees were still bleeding and weeping, and I realized how not strong I actually was. Started going
Mm.
to CrossFit for a while. They had a kid care there, so I would bring my kids and they would kind of watch what I was doing in the workout. They'd go in color, they'd watch. And then I guess you were maybe 8,
yeah,
7 or 8
around
when
8.
she wanted to start participating. So, you know,
Mm.
we would let her use really light weights or like an empty
Or
bar.
like a PVC pipe, like super easy stuff.
Yes, and then she just wanted to whatever I was doing, she wanted to be right there with me. So, you
Oh.
know, I would prep my lunches and, she would like, "Oh, I'll prep my lunch." She started looking and saying like, "How many grams of protein does this have?" And at one time she flipped the toothpaste around and she was like, "How many grams of protein does this
Oh
toothpaste have?"
my
And I was
gosh. That's
no.
awesome.
So I noticed that we were setting better examples for our kids, and I had maybe previously set a poor example because I had struggled with eating disorders,
Mm,
since I was, like, 14 years old, and even into my 30s, and actually probably in the early part of my 40s, I was still dealing with the repercussions from that. So I realized, I had set some
mm.
poor examples for my kids early on, not even realizing how bad it was for me. And then it was nice because we started replacing maybe those toxic ways of thinking with more positive ones. So
Well, and I think I was so young that I wouldn't say you had a negative response on it
mm,
necessarily, because I feel like when you're a kid, you don't really care what anybody's body looks like because you're
Yeah,
just as kids we're like more pure, I think. So we're like just
yeah,
seeing people as people. So I feel like you caught it at the time when I started becoming like aware of these things. So
well, mine didn't start out as a body image issue. I always call it a character building childhood. There were like really good
mm,
parts and then there were really hard parts. The hard parts taught me to need to exert control over something in my life when everything was out of control. And I
mm,
didn't know there were words for what I was doing. I just stopped eating and I lost a
mhm,
lot of weight. And by the time my mom realized how sick I was, she was like, "You have to start eating or this is going to be like a hospital stay. Like, it's this
mm.
serious now." And so
Yeah,
I was terrified to have to go to a hospital, so I started eating, but where I wasn't used to it, it made me sick to my stomach. And then
mm,
I thought, "Oh, well, there's a way around this." And so I developed a secondary eating disorder. I never give them names if I can help it because I don't,
yeah,
want to promote the wrong thing. But mine
right.
was definitely a control issue. Later on, though, once I got into college, gained a little weight in college, and of course, after I had kids, I just was like, well, I know how to drop weight really fast now.
Mm,
And then it became more about a body image thing. So then I didn't want the tail end of it to be something they remembered from their childhood.
yeah,
Um, I think you're gonna go through things regardless sometimes, but I just didn't want to, give them ammunition for something that they didn't need. I wanted
yeah,
to teach them a better way to deal with things if I could.
yeah.
So, it was nice that fitness came into the scene around that time as well.
So, Paris, you were 8 next to your mom lifting the PVC pipes. And
oh
so
yeah,
did you just wanna be just like your mom? Were you
I
like
did.
or
And I wanted to I think to where my parents allowed me to do video games pretty young too, and they would like play it with me. I always saw them like they were not just like my parents, like they were, but they were also just like my friends. It's like, wow, they play games with me. They go to they're
Mm,
doing the gym stuff and I want to start doing that too. Like whatever they were doing, I kind of just wanted to be just like them. So whenever I saw them going to the gym,
love
yeah, I
that.
was like, this looks cool. And I was like, it just looks fun too.
It is
And
fu so
so
when did that transition from like, "Hey, okay, I like doing this. This is a good hobby. I feel good about myself. I'm getting fit." When did that transition to, "I think I can help people and make
mm,
this," because now you guys are leading the Legacy XP coaching, which
Mhm.
you're saying, "Hey, we wanna help you." You guys' website says where training meets transformation and legends are built. I'm like, the song, "This is how legends are made," all of a sudden just plays in my head. You know? So how did that from hobby, "Okay, feel good about myself," to, like, "Let's do this. This is something we feel called to do."
I feel like for you, she did coaching in the past.
Mhm.
And so I'm sure it's earlier for you. For me, I feel like it's a recent development because I think I didn't have the confidence that I could help other people for a long time
Mhm,
because I was still figuring out a lot of it myself.
mhm,
And so I'm the type of person that feels like if I'm going to help somebody else, I feel like I need to be an expert at it or I'm not going to be helpful. And so that's actually recently, Sydney is the one that actually encouraged me to come into this with her. So pretty much when she invited me to do Legacy XP with her, that's when I realized I could help people. That's pretty much when it was.
It was. And actually, it's funny because, I always tell my clients this as well. Like, if we could only see ourselves through the lens of someone else, but that goes, I see the progress that my clients make through, their fitness journey. When they can't see it, I'll be like, oh, like, let me show you, like your shoulders are a little, you're getting some shoulder development, your measurements are smaller. But the same goes for people in general. So Paryss, I noticed, was doing a great job of being really encouraging with like emotional health and mental health and spiritual health online. And, we have both had the opportunity to be like guest speakers at different fitness conferences. And I was at one, and I remember we were having a conversation, and I said, health is not just one pillar, there's four. There's physical health, which for me is the easiest one to work on. That's, you know what I mean? Like, I can go do that. For me, I'm like, I know what to do. I go to the gym, I do it. If I go and do that, my mental health seems better. I've got some, endorphins and serotonin. And then my emotional health, the way I approach my problems the rest of that day is a little healthier. I'm not going to, fall into toxic behavior patterns as quickly. And then that leads to my spiritual health, because that one for me, and I don't think I'm alone in this, the spiritual health, while for me it's the most important, sometimes it's the hardest one for me to tackle, because that means sitting down with myself at my most like base level and being like, this is what's going on. Like, these check engine lights are on and we need to fix them. How do we fix that? And, and I don't like looking at the parts of myself that struggle. Like, that's not fun to do, and like, I wish that I could say I was just like this innately great person, but I'm not. You know what I mean? Like, without God, I just kind of suck as a person. And so like, that's the good about me. And so when I stop working on that, everything else, all my other pillars start to fall apart. So I was like, you're doing a really good job in like all these areas. And then I kind of felt like I was ready for a change in my work life. I had been teaching, which I love. I love to teach. And I had not gone back to coaching in about 5 or 6 years. So I stopped coaching right before COVID, and then took a lot of time off, and I was just teaching. And then I was like, I think I'm ready to kind of get back into like the fitness space again. I was like, do you want to partner up? Because I feel like between the two of us, like, we have very, very good strengths. I'm good with like emotional health. You're great with like the mental health, because you're super relatable, and like, she's just very unafraid to talk about spiritual things. And then sometimes I'm a little shyer, and I like to have conversations in person, but she just is like, boom,
I don't
everybody's
know
gonna
if it's
know.
a good thing, but I was like, you know what?
Oh,
Don't cover it.
It's a good, you know what? It is a good thing, because like whenever I would go to with my friends to the Comic-Con where we'd have a booth, my strengths would be the encouraging, like, I'm the bubbly, like, hey, let me hug you. Like, I'm the hugger. I'm the, like, oh my gosh, you look so cute. And she's like the intellectual, let's talk about the deep issues. And she's not so much the frou-frou, like, she's more the, you know, get down to the root issue of what's going on.
Well,
Let's talk about
that's our
theology.
dynamic.
Let's talk, and literally we would like tag team, where we would talk to somebody like, oh, I think you should meet my friend. Oh, I think you should meet my friend. And
I
so like,
love that.
God definitely made your guys' strengths different, because you guys are dealing with different issues that he's given you gifts in, to be able to handle something. Like, that's what partnership is for. It's a broader vision of the body of Christ, where we each have our own giftings that when we come together, we're unified to do the work of God. So
Absolutely.
can we talk real quick? Because I normally, when we talk about health, and especially in the Christian world, it's mind, body, soul, those three. So when you said you had 4 pillars, and the emotional and the mental are 2 different pillars, I found that very fascinating. Can you guys dive into why those are separate like that they're not melded into one, and that they're different?
So for me, um, emotions are how we feel about things. You know what I mean? It's like, usually for me, it's the way I react to a situation. And, whether that is as a feisty Italian or, my approach can vary greatly. depending on like, it depends greatly. My emotional health doesn't always go hand in hand with my mental health. So if
No.
things are not quiet here, my emotional health is all over the map. You know what I mean? Because
Mm.
it follows suit. So like while my brain is definitely more logical, like it's, I've got my, the way I'm processing, whether it's trauma or whether it's joy, you know what I mean? It's different than how I truly react to something. I was at my most depressed and I was still bubbly and I was like, I might not be here tomorrow. I'm that not okay in my brain. And so
Yeah.
people were perceiving me. I think the people closest to me smelled that something was off. They were like, wait, what's going on? But I would say 98% of people didn't know. My emotional responses were still correct. I still looked happy. I still, you know,
Mm.
um, I think
You were
for
cosplaying a
I was
together person.
cosplaying. Exactly. That's exactly what it felt like. And then my mental health was so, so dark. And
Mhm.
it was definitely, I was not seeing things the way that I should. For me, I think that's when I made a huge separation between the fact that your mental health and your emotional health can be very, very different. You know, I think even in the Bible, there says something about like the line that can divide the soul and the spirit. And I
Yeah.
was like thinking about that. I was like, we can know the right things to do and still have the wrong reaction to something.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like for me, just going through that depression where, I think I remember getting to a really dark place and I was
Mm.
just like, I remember praying one night. I was like, God, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Can you just come pick me up? Like send a bus. I just don't want to be here because I'm not in a place where I'm making great decisions mentally. And so even though emotionally I was still, having the appropriate emotional responses to people in my world, my mentality was so sad at that point that it would have led to, I think, something a lot heavier. So not to go
Yeah.
too heavy for a
It's
podcast, but
okay. We
it
can we can go wherever it takes us. I'm literally like, we can be crying, we can be laughing. It's okay. Like, because it's a real conversation. We have real people that listen to this, and we're real people, and we all have. I mean, when I was 14, I was probably in a similar situation where I tried to just end stuff, and you know, on the outside, like you said, you would never know. I was the good little church girl, smiling, everything was happy, but inside I was dying.
yeah.
And so I understand that division. And I feel like in the culture we're in today, and especially, and you may find this more in the fitness world too, in the cosplay world, I feel like we are struggling so much with emotional and mental health. And there's like they are two different things. So as you describe it, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, 100%. And by putting them together, you almost discredit one, like you lessen one because they are separate. It seems like they are completely different things because we can pretend like we're fine, but in here it's crazy
Yeah.
and not good. So what are some things that you guys coach, if you don't mind, like that to encourage or help people who are in a dark place emotionally or mentally? What are some strategies you tell people to do?
I first like to let people know that because I've had someone ask before, like, well, you're a Christian, like you should just be happy all the time. Everything should just be like, well,
Lies.
just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that like, if you have mental health problems, that those are just like gonna go away.
Yeah.
Like,
Pray it away.
yeah, it doesn't.
Right away.
I hate that so much. Not saying that God couldn't take it away,
You
but
know
like
what?
Paul, Paul
Like,
prayed for his thorn in the flesh to be taken away, and Christ or God said,
and
"My
God chose not to.
patience."
Like, God can absolutely heal your mind.
Mhm.
2 different pregnancies. One, I needed medication. The other one, my mother-in-law prayed over me and it was gone. Like,
Mm,
so I
yeah,
believe 100% God can heal it. But I think in the Christian world, I don't know, one, there's a stigma for medicine. And like, no, you can take prescription stuff if you need it. If you're, there's things that help that is good,
It took
but
a long
also,
time to have that mentality. I was really
yeah,
judgmental for a long time about meds, and now I'm on them. So,
Well,
like, obviously,
and like coach or go to a therapist, go to talk to someone or a friend. There's such a stigma that, oh, we have to pretend like we're okay and nothing's wrong to the outside world when we're really struggling. And it's like, how you doing? Oh, great. Everything's great. Never better. And then you're literally go home crying and,
yeah.
you know, so, so as a Christian, okay, pray it away. Okay. No, yes, we pray.
Yes, we pray. And that doesn't mean it's going to go away. But a friend of mine once said, and it's a quote that she got from somewhere else. I wish I knew where it originated, but I don't. But she said, a shared joy is a double joy. A shared sorrow is half a sorrow. And I thought about that because I had things that
That's
I
great.
needed to just vent to someone without them being judgmental, without them saying like, you suck as a person. Like, I know that already. Like, that's why I'm struggling here. Like, I know the way I think about things, when you come from, maybe you've had trauma, maybe you haven't. Having no trauma can be just as traumatic as having a childhood or a life full of trauma, because then maybe you don't deal with things because you have different standards than everybody else. So I never judge what someone is going through for that reason. But what I want to tell them is like, share that with somebody. If you can share it with
Yeah.
me, I'm going to be the last person to judge you. I will never have a stone to throw at anyone for any reason. Like, I just don't. But I will try to tell people, like, start where you can and do what you can with what you have, whether that's fitness, whether that's, your mental health, your emotional health, spiritual health, even. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to start small. Sometimes, what was it? Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was destroyed in one, so you have to
Yeah.
start small to build something great. And we're not going to let one day ruin everything. And I'm just going to be like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I'm just back to square one. I'm not worth anything. And so one of the things that we do with clients, and this can be across the board. Now, we do ask it in a physical, context, like, what was a win from this week? But what we find is a lot of times people will tell us an emotional win or a mental win, or even a spiritual win, and we see that, like, oh, I lost 5 pounds too. But what we see mostly is like, I've been doing something productive and
Mhm.
I'm taking back control in my life. And so then you're starting to see like areas in their life where it's like, you know, I'm happier. I notice things that I didn't notice before, and so for us, while physical is important, it's not the only asset
Yeah.
we focus on with our clients. Like, we make sure that they know that we're there to talk about whatever, you know what I mean? Even our clients who maybe don't share the same approach that we do spiritually,
Mhm.
we're still a safe place. You know what I mean? Like, you can come talk to us about anything, but also we're not gonna like shove that down your throat. Like, you know what? Like,
Yeah.
you're entitled to the way you want to think. You're entitled to your own opinions. But like, we're here and we're approachable. Like, if you want to talk about that, like, yeah, like, we're totally down to talk about that as well. We can talk about your bench press PR and the Bible. We can wrap it up in one
Yeah.
conversation. It's
Love
fine.
it.
I think
Yeah.
too another thing that helps is like redirection, because I
Mhm.
think whenever you pay too much attention to struggles, it kind of validates them in a way. So like if you're like, okay, I'm struggling to want to go to the gym. Instead of focusing on like the not wanting to go to the gym, it's like pick something. Like, we kind of give our clients like habit. It's like, when you want to do this, try this instead,
Mm.
because it's gonna help you kind of. It's like a dog, right? Like, when you're training a dog, they say don't just tell the dog no, give them something else to do. So like, if they're chewing on your shoes, don't just say no, give them a chew toy instead. So
Yeah.
then it's kind of like a redirection, so there's something to take your mind off of it. It works with humans too. We're pretty simple in some ways.
It reminds me of the meme where it's like, haven't tried Lord of the Rings or tried Lord of the Rings, you didn't like it, and it's like, try it
Try
again.
again.
Sorry, that was immediately came to my head. I'm like,
I
try
love
it
it.
again. Try it again.
We also talk
S
about romanticizing small things in your life.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we're big nerds. So we always
What are
call
you
it,
talking about?
we
What?
call it like main
Crazy.
character. Like, if your life was a movie and you were the main character, would people be interested in this episode or would they tune out? You know what I mean?
That's
And
great.
so, like, you are the only person who has to live in your headspace. You know, you can say whatever you want, you can write whatever you want, but truthfully, you know yourself better than anyone. And it's like romanticize the things that you have to do. You know what I mean? So let's say you're folding laundry and you're just like, oh, I just don't want to do this. Romanticize that somehow. You know what I mean? Like, this is the laundry that you're gonna fold right before you go to like Mordor. Like, let's go. Like, come on, we gotta pack. We got everything to do.
Good.
You know, and then just having and I do this for myself, you know, like The Office. I love The Office.
Love it.
And so sometimes when I'm at home and it's just like me and the two chihuahuas, you know, I always look into a camera off screen and I'll just say little things, which is crazy because I'm talking to myself, but it makes my day like more entertaining and more fun. So sometimes you have to do little small things like that just to get yourself into a different way of thinking.
I think
And that works
sometimes
for
I
me.
tell people, I'm like, if I'm the only one laughing at my own jokes, I'm doing good. Like, like if I made myself laugh,
I am my target audience.
then we're good. Like if someone else wants to join my weird humor, then there's bonus points for that. But yeah, if I'm laughing, 'cause
Exactly. It's a
my
cherry
own-
on top.
it's good. We're gonna have to cut the conversation short and create a part 2 with Miss Sidney Scott and Paryss Scott Tan, and I hope you hang in there for part 2. And remember, guys, be blessed, know who you are in Christ, and take ground for the kingdom. See ya.